Hello, I would like to welcome everyone to this session. My name is Leigh Cooper. I'm a full-time official for UTU. We also have with us Alistair Donaghy from the National Education Union and Nuala O'Donnell from the INTO, which is the Irish National Teachers Organisation. So what do we offer? UTU, NEU and INTO all work together to offer a range of training to our members, which includes school rep training and health and safety training. And also we've been doing a series of webinars. Due to COVID, obviously, we're all online. We usually do face-to-face training, and hopefully we will be able to move back to the face-to-face training in the future, all being well. I'm presenting this webinar and there is a facility for asking questions. So you simply type them into the chat box and hopefully we will answer your questions as we go along, or alternatively then we will answer them at the end of the webinar. So this webinar will be focused on flexible working. And by that I mean looking at how a teacher can change their regular pattern of work through the use of agreed TNC procedures. TNC is the Teachers Negotiating Committee, which would be comprised of representatives from the employing authorities and also from the recognised trade unions, which are of course UTU, INTO, NEU, NASUWT and NAHT. So they discuss issues and agree on procedures which are affecting teachers, and these procedures then are implemented. So we will be looking at the relevant procedures in place at the minute, and these are the ones that should be used if you are applying for a flexible working arrangement. So unfortunately, there's no automatic right to work flexibly, but you have the right to request it. So when a teacher wishes to make adjustments to their contracted hours of work, at the minute there are 3 procedures which we generally use: the temporary variation of contract, job share procedure and flexible working. So why would a teacher want to change their working pattern? Obviously, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is just a range of reasons why someone would want to change their working pattern: that the work-life balance, they have childcare responsibilities, they're caring for a vulnerable or an elderly relative, to facilitate study, to facilitate other employment, or for health reasons. So these are the links to the documents, to the procedures that are relevant at the minute. There is agreement on one particular procedure which incorporates everything from all of these, but it hasn't been finally agreed yet. So at the minute, we're still working from these procedures. Generally speaking, we would always recommend that a teacher use the flexible working one. And it'll become clear why we do that as we move through the presentation, but I'm going to touch on the temporary variation and the job share procedures as well as the flexible working one. So looking at the temporary variation of contract, this allows a teacher to reduce their hours on a temporary basis for a short period of time. And this can be up to a year. It can also be extended there, as you can see, in extenuating circumstances. And generally, it would be extended for a further year with agreement. It can also be used to add additional hours for a permanent part-time teacher who potentially wants to work a bit more, but that also has to be done with agreement. We don't find that that happens very often. So the application procedure. For the 3 procedures, the application process is quite similar. You would be asked to fill out a relevant application form, which can be found alongside the procedures on the department's website. We would also advise that a cover letter be used, and that would include a brief overview of why you want to make a change, for how long you want the change to last for, and what your preferred pattern of work would be. For example, do you want to drop down to a 4-day week or a 3-day week, or even if you want to change your working day, and that would be potentially for primary schools, for a teacher to stop work at 2 rather than the full day. And obviously that has to be with agreement. The principal then would take your request to the governors and they would discuss it and consider the request. And then they would come back to you and let you know in due course. So the application procedure continued. Now it says it's important that the decision in relation to the viability of a temporary variation of contract is based on clear and justifiable business reasons. So for example, what are the additional costs of someone reducing their working hours, what effect it will have on the school's ability to meet the pupils' needs, and the effect on the quality of education to be provided. So obviously what that really means is that it depends on the needs of the school, and it depends on the staffing levels of the school, and it also depends on what the actual teacher is asking for. We would expect then that the governors would consider everything seriously, and they would make every effort to facilitate whatever it is that you're asking for. So in each procedure, if you are not granted your request, then you can appeal this. And I mean, we would expect fully that a school would give a full business case as to why they can't facilitate your request, but you have then the ability to appeal it. And at that particular meeting, then you would be entitled to be accompanied by a trade union representative. So looking at the job share scheme, now we sometimes find that all requests to change hours are referred to as job share, as effectively that is exactly what's happening in this situation, where one teacher works part of the week and another then works for the remainder of the week. The objectives apply to all the procedures, as you can see here. So again, it's a better work-life balance, and it also allows school to retain those experienced members of staff. The principals tend to use the umbrella term job share for all the procedures, but each procedure has differences, and we will look at those as we go through. Now, the job share procedure, the difference with this one is that the application must be made before the 31st of January in order for the new working arrangement then to start at the beginning of the new academic year. That would be in September of that same year. And we would expect that the scheme then would, with this scheme then, your governors would invite you in to meet with you and explore all the details and all the issues that would go along with applying for a job share scheme. And that would happen within 28 days of receipt of the application. So looking at the flexible working scheme, now this is the one that we would most commonly advise a teacher to use. So what are the benefits of this scheme? Obviously, they can allow the teacher to work from, they allow the teachers to change the hours that they're working. Schools can retain experienced staff whilst they're reducing the costs. It can help with staff morale because teachers then obviously can balance their work and home demands. And also this scheme is available to principals and VPs. So as you can see, this slide shows the equality legislation which could apply to any case where there has been a request for flexible working. So the aims of this procedure, again, are to assist teachers with caring responsibilities and to balance these with their role at school, to enable teachers to accommodate other personal circumstances with their role at school, and to ensure compliance with the legislative requirements for employees who have the right to apply to work flexibly and have their applications considered seriously by the Board of Governors. The scheme applies to all teaching staff, as I've said, including principals and vice principals. And in order to make a request under the scheme, a teacher will have to have worked continuously for 26 weeks as a teacher in Northern Ireland at the date the application is made, and not normally have made another application in the past 12 months. So how do you apply? So the teacher should apply in writing using the relevant application form, and in this case, the form is called an FW1. Within 28 days of receipt of the written application, the principal should arrange to meet with the teacher, and that would be to discuss the finer details of the application and how it would look in a practical sense. And again, it's important that the teacher stipulates this in a cover letter. They would give a brief overview as to what the reasons are for making the application, for what the situation would look like in practical terms. So would it be you want to go down to 3 days, go down to 4 days, and how that would look in terms of how you would share that role with another teacher. As we said earlier, our advice would generally be to use the flexible working procedure. And the reason for this is that it really does what it says on the tin. It is flexible. The arrangement can be reviewed and changed, but only with agreement, and it can be done on a yearly basis. We would always advise that someone would request that they have that review period, and they can change it as on a yearly basis, depending on how things work out with the practical agreement. The flexible working agreement can last for up to 3 years on a temporary basis. And after that time, then it's for the teacher to decide if they want to go back to their usual working hours, or that they want to keep the reduced pattern of work on a permanent basis. And again, then, if the governors have taken advice and they think that they will refuse this, they must give a firm business case as to why this is. So there must be clear reasons for their refusing your application. And a teacher then who believes the request has not been properly considered can lodge an appeal, and they set out the grounds of appeal in writing to the Chair of Board of Governors within 14 working days of receipt of the notification of the decision. If the appeal is upheld, the notification must include a description of your new working pattern that has been previously agreed with you, state the date from which the new working pattern is to take effect, and what date, if necessary, it will end on. Then, if the appeal is dismissed, the notification must state the grounds for the decision and provide a clear explanation as to why your request has been refused. And there is no further right of appeal under this scheme. Now, as I said, if your request is denied, you should be informed within 14 working days, and we would fully expect the reasons to be clear why your request couldn't be accommodated. You have the right of appeal, as I said before, and your union then would advise in terms of lodging the appeal within the required time frame. We would argue that successful flexible working is happening in a whole range of settings right across the board, and it would be reasonable to expect that it could work in your school too. Issues to be aware of: you have the right to request flexible working, but no automatic right for your request to be granted. You can stipulate the pattern of work that you prefer, but there is no guarantee that this will be granted. There may have to be negotiation around this, and it may be dependent on the needs of the school. So if, for example, you've reduced to a 3-day working week, your working hours would be 3/5 of a full-time employee. So that would be 3/5 of the 1265 hours, which would equate to 759 hours. This then should be reflected in your time budget, and that would be your weekly hours, and your workload would also be reflected in that time budget. So 3/5 of a full-time employee means 3/5 of the workload, and that would include things like report writing and planning and so on, and that would also have to be agreed with whoever is sharing the rest of your role. If you have a TA, a teaching allowance, you can retain this on your reduced hours as long as you're able to complete the full role within your reduced hours. If it's agreed that, for example, your working days are Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, you should only work on these days, and changes should be made only with prior agreement. And that would include your working on the baker days and the staff development days. So if there's a week-long baker days in August, then you would only be contracted to work Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. You can work the other 2 days, but we would expect that you would be paid for these, potentially through NISTER. Or you could rearrange or change the days that you work to fit in with the training or whatever's available on those other days. But that would have to be with prior agreement. One thing to consider is a reduced working week may impact on your final pension. So we recommend that you take financial advice on this, just so you know what this would look like in terms of pounds and pence at the end of your working life, and how that would impact on your final pension. So to sum up, we advise the use of the flexible working scheme at the minute. As I said earlier, there has been agreement on a new scheme, but it hasn't been finalised. And once that is agreed, we will then potentially do a new update for that particular scheme. You can request a change in working pattern in writing, and you must stipulate your preferred arrangement. Flexible working can be in place for up to 3 years, after which the teacher decides to either revert back to the original contract or to keep the alternative working pattern on a permanent basis. If your request is denied, you have the right to appeal. There may be negotiation in terms of an agreement to suit both you as the teacher and also to suit the needs of the school. Any permanent member of staff can avail of the procedure for any particular reason. So if there are any questions, you can either email us if there are any questions, you can email your union, and there are the 3 contact details there for UTU. There's our website and our phone number. For NEU, the same, and INTO as well. Hopefully then we've covered everything in the webinar, and we can answer any other questions when this is finished. Thank you very much.